we talked before about this irrational hatred that the UK, the Brits had towards Russia. But is there a similar thing within Germany? Just this historical animosity towards Russia, and that actually is just kind of fueling something? I mean, remnants of World War II, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
the Germans lost so many people to the Russian, to the Red Army, and the Soviets lost so many people to the Germans. So I didn't really think about it that sense because it just feels like post World War II Germany was just something completely different. They're just fun, happy Germans that are, apologetic for all the sins of their past and maybe even overly apologetic sometimes. But maybe there's still something kind of simmering there, this hatred towards Russia. I don't know.
Yeah. I can't really answer that, but it seems like a reasonable, explanation. I think actually within Germany, you would expect, maybe there is this residual, anti-Russian hatred, and I'm sure there is some, and that may explain some of the anti-Russian policies that we see there. But we also see parties that actually really want to bury the hatchet with Russia that have grown, tremendously. The AfD is the most obvious example, right? It's apparently now the single most popular party in Russia, and they do want to make peace. So this is a popular position, and this is a party too that is particularly successful within Eastern Germany, which was of course occupied by the Soviet Union, was part of the Warsaw Pact for decades. Yet you don't see a desire to be hostile to Russia, among these Eastern Germans. But then, there's Sarah Wagenknecht's party too that also wants to have good relations. They're approximately 5%. So together, just these two parties are about a third of the German population. So Germany as a whole is not particularly Russophobic. I mean, you actually find much more Russophobia, interestingly, in places like Scandinavia, countries, including in countries that have never had any sort of negative historical experience vis-a-vis Russia, places like Norway and Sweden. Now, the Finns, they did have, there was a war between the Soviet Union and Finland. So you could explain some of the Russophobia in Finland in historical terms, but not in Sweden, not in Norway. It doesn't, and in the case of England, yeah, the same thing. It's actually, we were allies, of course, during World War II, but you still have this extreme Russophobia there.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to run soon, Dad. So just one last question.
Okay.
How much do you believe the situation has gotten significantly more dire within the Ukraine-Russian conflict since just a week ago?
Significantly more dire, you mean for the Ukrainians on the front lines?
Just the possibility of a larger war, of the spreading of this.
Well, in general, it's looking very, very bad for the Ukrainians. Again, the Russians are advancing in many places. There are signs of at least, of a collapse on certain parts of the front, like around Konstantinovka. And this is absent, the entry of any new troops. There has been, these massive drone and missile attacks on military infrastructure within Ukraine. And we're seeing that the Ukrainians are just unable to do anything about it. And then what I've heard is that because now of the increasing drone dominance, or the dominance in drones by the Russians, it has become, the logistics of the Ukrainians has been severely affected, and they're finding it very, very difficult to get to supplies to the front line. And it's, we don't notice it. The laymen in general just tend to overlook this, but logistics are just absolutely crucial to any kind of military effort. It used to be like a couple of years ago that I've heard that, like, when new troops were sent to the front lines, they would maybe drive up in an armored personnel carrier within just a few hundred meters and then get out and walk to the front lines. Now they've got to, they get out at night, maybe 10 kilometers away, and they have to, make their way individually, often taking very circuitous routes to get to the front line. And when they get to the front line, they often are just stuck there because it's so hard to get them out, again, because of this drone dominance by the Russians. So to actually supply them, The Ukrainians are sending individual soldiers, just carrying like a backpack worth of goods to get to the front line, or they're using agricultural drones to just drop supplies, some water or food. But we're talking about very small packages. So anyway, all of these things indicate that um, uh, this is a military that is really at the end of its tether. There's just really, they're just hanging on by their fingernails at this point. So if the Russians indeed choose to launch a major new offensive with a lot of fresh units, I think we could see a major collapse on a good part of the line.
Okay, yeah, and then my kind of question also was just about how the Western backers will respond to it. Do you feel like that we're in danger of some type of escalation from
Right. Well,
Germany, the West, and
right. Right. This is a perennial question. Again, it's just like, these are the people that have been in denial, that seem to believe that, in fact, in spite of all this, what I've told you, but you still get these very optimistic stories in the Western media. I see them all the time. And it seems like a lot of these people, a lot of these leaders like Merz, that they believe in them. Otherwise it's hard to explain their policies. But yeah, if there's a major offensive, it collapses. That's going to change everything. That's going to, and again, it just, I don't know how they'll respond, but it's going to be a real threat, to this delusion that's been so dear to them over the years.
okay. All right, well, we'll wait and see. I just feel that there's been no lull in the past since we started these conversations a little over a year ago. It's just always like Ukraine, Russia escalating. If it's not there, then it's Iran, or it's the whole world is in chaos. And I just feel like everybody's waiting for a big boom, and the way that things are happening, I just feel like it's going to happen eventually. Just I'm not seeing any off ramps, for these wars. It's scary.
Right. Well, there are off ramps. For example, Putin has offered an off ramp, but there's no indication of any kind of willingness to take it. That's the problem.
Right.